So nice to see everyone, and welcome to the VID21 conference. My name is Julia Steele, the creator and host of what is becoming my favorite thing to do every March. So if you are new to VID, welcome. If you are coming back to VID after last year, welcome back. It is so great to have you here. So many familiar faces. Hands up who is in Melbourne. Public holiday, and you're here. High five to you, congratulations. so great to see you all here. And yeah, for Sarah, who's in the background, welcome Sarah Wong to the VID family. She's going to be driving things in the background. So if you've got any questions or need any help, you can't hear me or anything like that, please just reach out to Sarah in the chat. So the first question I used to ask at VID last year is, where are you from? So before I dive into the main presentation, it would be great to see where everyone is. So Pip's already raised her hand for being in Melbourne. Jean, I know you're in New Zealand, so welcome from New Zealand. I've got another Kiwi in Sue. Tamara's on the south coast of New South Wales. Dave, of course, is from the future. Why am I not surprised, Dave? Hobart, you're got our lovely sponsors, the Change Management Institute, joining from Hobart. Another Kiwi in Andrea and Auckland. So many great to see so many of you here. For people that don't know the story of VID, VID was something that came out of the chaos that was March last year. I woke up one morning and we were suddenly told to all stay home. And in the middle of the night, I had a crazy idea to bring a few of my speaker friends together, and not wondering necessarily what it would look like, but certainly thinking, how can I bring people together at this difficult time and help them as much as possible? So I reached out to a few people, and that few people turned into 172 people. And over 19 days, we had this sort of mega online event, and 15,000 people from 32 countries came, which just ended up blowing my mind. I didn't know in March that in March, a year later, we would still be wrestling with some of what we're wrestling with at the moment. And I know we're all in different places in the world, and we've all probably experienced the last year in a very different way. But I feel like it's time to bring people back together again, and it's time to start talking about the future. What did last year mean for us? What are we going to do? What are we going to do next? So the whole theme for VID this year is shape your future. And whether that means shape your future from a business point of view, a career point of view, or a life point of view, what I'm hoping is that you get some inspiration to kind of look at last year for what it was, but also to take the great things from it, learn from the not so great things from it as well, but also to go, well, where are we going? Where are we going next? So it is great to see so many of you here, and we are recording this entire session, and it will be on YouTube and available in the community. So if you need to drop off at any point, or you want to watch the playback, it will all be there. So we're going to kick off with my sessions around owning your past to shape your future. And before I jump into that, I just want to do an official sort of opening and an acknowledgement to country. So for people who are in Australia, will be very familiar that it is traditional to acknowledge the land on which we stand. So I'm on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I want to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and I also want to recognise and acknowledge any First Nation or Indigenous people that are on this session today. I welcome you. I also want to highlight and celebrate that it is International Women's Day, which is a bit exciting. It's a public holiday in Melbourne, and it's International Women's Day, and it's the first day of VID. So we've got a whole lot of things going on. But the International Women's Day I chose for the start of VID this year for a couple of reasons. First, the theme for International Women's Day is to choose to challenge. And I think in the context of shaping your future and what VID stands for, I think there's a whole lot of things we could choose to challenge. For me personally, when I think about International Women's Day and celebrating women, what International Women's Day really means for me is how do we actually accelerate parity. And I'm not sure if you saw my post on LinkedIn last week, but I firmly believe, or one of the areas that frustrates me the most is when I go to events and I don't see parity. So today, I've intentionally created a day that looks like parity. We have 2 women speakers, we have 2 male speakers, and it's me raising my hand to saying I'm choosing to challenge what events look like, particularly on International Women's Day. And so we've got a mixed, very balanced program for today, which is really exciting. Now, when I picked this as my speaker photo, I didn't expect to have quite as much positive feedback. It turns out that using a childhood photo as your speaker photo is a good thing. But this is me when I was about 5 years old, maybe 4 years old actually. And I know I was 4 years old because I lived in Germany. So for people that came to VID last year, you'll know that both of my parents were in the military. For people at my last session, you might have actually got to meet my parents, but both my parents were in the military and we got to move around a lot, which means that I can date pretty much every photo that's taken of me based on where it was, because we lived in a lot of different places and we saw a lot of different things. But this is me about age 4, and in the background's the house where we lived in Germany. And I've intentionally cropped this photo because below the knee are very nice knee-high white socks and brown sandals, which only the British can get away with wearing, let's face it. So I've intentionally cropped this to not humiliate myself, but I look at this little girl and I know exactly what she's thinking. She's very excited about something, but she had no idea at that point in time where she was going to go. She was 4. We don't have a lot of ambitions when we're 4, apart from maybe what we want for Christmas and when our birthdays are. But I look at how my life's played out since then, the positive things and the negative things. And I started to realize that I've dealt with a lot of uncertainty in my past. And when people talk about the future being uncertain, I think actually I've done uncertainty before. Now, for people that were at my last session, no, she cracked me up. For people that were at my last session at VID, I shared a very personal story that relates to trauma. And for a long time, I hid that from a lot of people. But I also have moved around a lot. I've moved countries, I've changed jobs. I look at what happened last year, and there's a significant amount of uncertainty that I've been through. And I think when you start to look through your past, there will be a lot of uncertainty. There will be a lot of uncertainty that you've navigated as well. So what I want to do in this session today is just challenge when we talk about the future and some of the narrative that's playing out at the moment about the future being uncertain. Is it any more uncertain than our past was? And I'm just going to pause there for a second and ask you to think about that and go, is tomorrow any more uncertain than it was yesterday? Was it any more uncertain than it was last year? Is it any more uncertain than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago? And what I've actually started to reflect on, particularly after last year, is that tomorrow is no more uncertain than it was yesterday or last year or 5 years or 10 years ago. But what I have now is lived experience to help me deal with those things. Yet Nosh is saying we've learned to handle uncertainty better. And I think we're certainly more open to having conversations about what uncertainty means, what it feels like, the implications for us from a stress, anxiety, mental health and well-being point of view. We've done all of those things over the last year. And Sue's saying uncertainty is always there. And I couldn't agree more. What I think uncertainty does to us, though, is a number of things. We all have desires, ambitions, things that we want to do to make our lives better. But to do those things, we also have to take action. And all that stands between us taking action and those outcomes is overcoming uncertainty. Now, that uncertainty might be fear of, stepping outside of your comfort zone. It might be doing something new that you haven't done before. But I think when I spoke to a lot of people over the last year, people in one of these 5 places. So the first conversation I'm having with people is, actually, I'm so exhausted after last year. I feel so discombobulated that even though there's stuff I want to do, I can't. I've just got nothing left in the bank. So if you're sitting there thinking about what to get out of VID this year, and all you're looking at doing is moving from, I just need some inspiration because I need to shift from I can't to I could, that's fine. Give yourself the space to do that work. I've certainly felt a few times, particularly after my business took quite a turn in the wrong direction last year, that I thought I can't do this. It's too hard. But just recognize that if that's where you are, that's okay. But through the sessions of VID this year, I want you to start to think about, it's like, what could I do? Once we've got to what could I do, there's a part of the conversation that's like, what will you do? And I'm a firm believer of setting goals. The project manager in me, can't live without a plan of some description. I hate to admit it, but I am a bit of a plan freak. But I like to set things to achieve. But what is really important once we've got those plans is actually doing them. And once we've done them, actually saying, I am this new version of myself. So whether that is, I am a better leader at work, I'm a better parent at home, I'm more in charge of my career, I am more satisfied with where I am, whatever I am means to you. I really want you to encourage, before we get into all of the fantastic sessions this year, is just to think about, where are you on this journey? What do you want to get out of the 70 odd sessions that we've got this year? Because what can I do to sort of point you in the direction of the sessions that are going to help you the most? So the whole point of setting up the community this year is so that it's not just an event that you come to and you watch, but you can actually start to share things and I go, okay, if you're really interested in careers, you really need to come to this session and this session. So really encourage you to think about what you want to get out of it and help me guide you to the sessions that are going to help you the most. Now, I've been up and down this funky curve a few times over the last year. So it's not to say that once we get to I am, we can't go back down. And I certainly know even just things like having the circuit breaker lockdowns, you think you're in control and then all of a sudden you're not. And I know for friends in New Zealand, we're doing really well, and then depending on where you are in New Zealand, you've gone back a little bit. And then an earthquake decided to throw things into the mix as well. So there's a whole lot of uncertainty there as well. But I would just really encourage you to think about where you are on this curve and where would you like to be? And if the I am is a better version of you, spend 5 minutes after this session just writing down 3 or 4 points and go, what does I am look like? Is it a better leader? Is it a better person at home? Is it being more in charge of your career? And think about those. I'm just going to pause for a second and check out the chat. So Jean's saying it's a reminder how we view and reframe events is crucial in moving forward positively. That's half the work. So you're saying that's half the fun. Earthquake, tsunami, risk, lockdown. Yeah, of course you have. I think sometimes we think that the pandemic of the last year has been the only thing that's happened, but certainly there's a lot more happening around the world, regardless of where you are, and it's not just the pandemic. Pip's saying, I certainly think 2020 has shown us how precarious life is. Relatively comfortable lives have been rocked. Absolutely. So what do you guys think when you look at VID and shaping your future between business, life and career? What's on the priority list? Just drop your comments in the chat. Chris is saying he definitely feels more grounded, able to focus on what he can control rather than what I can't. Are people focused on work or life or careers or a bit of everything? What do you guys think? Tamara's saying it's a good time to try new things. Yeah, I've certainly started a whole lot of new habits, or trying to start a whole lot of new habits. My husband might disagree with me, but yeah, there's some great comments in the chat coming through. Not just saying I'm focused on me, as selfish as it may sound. I don't think that's selfish, and I think one of the things that we actually should do is prioritize ourselves a little bit more. Susan Hunter, I think, is doing a session about not being selfish, or self-care isn't selfish. And I think I've certainly enjoyed Nosh having more time to myself over the last year. Andrea's saying honing focus on what we can or want to influence. Jean's saying big topics look great for covering balance between recalibrating life and business. So yeah, so I think we have, if you go back to that chart, I don't know about you, but I've certainly felt that what was business and what was life, or the work-life balance, has definitely kind of merged and been squished together. And depending on where you are in the world and where we're going next, I don't think we'll ever, well, I personally believe we won't get from back to work and life, and that we will all be in this hybrid world for a while. And it's how do we make the best of that. There's certainly some things that I know I don't want to reintroduce to my life. And it actually last year was a great circuit breaker to stop doing those things and to start doing some new things. And I think we've actually got some conscious choices to make. So when I think about, a lot of people ask me how I take action, and particularly after VID last year, it was how was I able to do what I did? Not just in the context of VID, but just what are the things that keeps the wheels turning? And so I came up with this after a few conversations last year. And I think we all play these different roles at different points in our time, in our lives. But I think we also have a bias to some of these roles. So I just want to take you through them and see what you guys think. So I think the first role, or the first thing that I look for when I'm thinking about the future and where I'm going, is actually just be looking for opportunities. And I find, particularly when I worked in corporate, I really was so busy that I just wasn't looking. I wasn't curious. I wasn't looking for things that were broader. I was sort of head down, bum up. So the first question I want you to think about is, how much are you actually looking? So in that seeker role, do you spend enough time actually looking at what's going on around you? What's going on in your industry? What's going on around you at home? Potentially things that you want to do. Penny Lacasso, who is speaking tomorrow, she took her 8-year-old son hiking in the Himalayas. Now, that to me is a pretty bold thing to do, but I hadn't actually contemplated that is something you could do with an 8-year-old. But now that I've seen that she can do it, you can do it. You go, okay, well, I'm curious. There's an opportunity there that I might want to explore. So just think about, over the space of a week, how much time do you spend looking for opportunities for yourself? Would be the first thing to do. The second part then is, once we've looked for opportunities, is what are we actually dreaming about? Now, I had a lot of dreams last night, mostly about not waking up for this session this morning. But I really want you to think about what is possible in your life. And then once we've got some great ideas, how do you actually turn those into reality? Now, there's lots of things I dream to do at the moment, but in reality, they're not going to happen. Like, I dream about being able to get back on a plane and go back home to see my parents. Reality is that's not going to happen. but I can spend more time talking to them on Zoom, for example. I think behind every plan, though, is what I call a critic. And the critic is someone that says, even though we've got clear steps, we don't take them. Yeah, Jean's dreaming of visiting Melbourne again already. Yeah, I'll be there with you, Jean. So I think for all the time that you were here, we didn't actually get to connect because we were in lockdown. So looking forward to you coming back. But how many times have you built a plan and then talked yourself out of it? Because I think we are our own worst critics. We are our own worst critics sometimes. And the number one thing that I find that helps me when I start to critique my own work is to ask myself, what is the thing that I'm most scared of? So in the context of VID, having a conference without any speakers isn't a very good conference. So the first thing I had to go and solve was finding some speakers. So critiquing my own plan and recognizing what I was afraid of. I also think that we do a lot of controlling. And I think when we talk about building a plan, whether we actually take accountability for that plan is something I've certainly noticed, that I've got a great plan, but if it doesn't get delivered, why not? But ultimately we've got to champion the work that we come up with. That's where the velocity comes from. And I've built this in the context of just about every project I've delivered goes through these steps. But I also believe that life is a project too, and that we have to take these steps to champion ourselves. And by championing ourselves, we find more opportunities, and that's where the cycle and the flywheel and the speed starts to come forward. I'm just going to pause there for a second. Jean's saying she loves that, take accountability for the plan. For people that I can see, I know a lot of you in the background there, but you all have the ability to unmute yourselves this year, which is great. Sarah's saying, what a great way of putting it, championing ourselves. So what would it mean to champion yourself? What would that look like?
I think that would be, for me, would be to be less critical and to sort of believe in the skills and experience that I bring, even if it's a setting that's unfamiliar. You still bring something with you every time you show up, and you just need to try showing up, I think.
Yeah. And certainly in the context of owning our past, none of us are 4 years old anymore. I know a lot more at 40 than I did at 4, standing in my parents' garden in Germany with knee-high socks on and brown shoes. So I think we every day that goes past, every bad thing that happens still gives us the tools and the techniques and the learnings and the experience to do more. You know, before I ran VID last year, I'd never run an event, or certainly an online event before. I managed a lot of projects, but I'd never run an online event. Now it's a regular part of what I do all the time. And it's only because out of uncertainty came something that was an opportunity that I turned into an idea, that I made into a plan, that I took accountability for delivering and then championed again. So this model is something that I'm not just talking about, it's something that I look at and I do. I've done through VID, and it's something that I've done in many other areas as well.
Julia, can I just say, I think all of the points you made are so pertinent at the moment, but the critic, I know myself, you know, you get to make the plan and then we come up with 1,000 reasons why it won't work. Yes. And that's kind of a big, especially at the moment, with all the uncertainty from last year and you know, like we've had in New Zealand, when just things are rolling along. And I know for myself, you know, look at trying to find a place to live and all that sort of thing. And then suddenly you get an earthquake and it just, and then your critic comes in and you go, oh, well, I can't, you know, I can't do this now because of that sort of thing. So it's finding a way to actually turn the critic off, but also turn the critic off, even if it's, because it tends to pop up with external crises and dramas mostly, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the first thing is being aware that we are where we are. So are we critiquing ourselves? Are we being critical of ourselves? And how do we pull ourselves out of that? The other thing I think we all do is when something's hard, we do all of the low-hanging fruit around it. We don't actually do the hardest part. So for example, if I go back to the VID example, the hardest piece of creating VID is finding speakers and finding attendees. The mechanics of VID, the Zoom meetings, the websites, I could play around with that. That's my happy place because it's in the background and I can tinker with it and I can set up meetings and websites, and my background in technology, that's the nice, safe space. But if I don't actually go and do the hardest things first, so finding speakers, finding people to come, the rest of the technology, the rest of the setup doesn't actually matter. And it's same as, you know, going to the gym. The hardest thing about going to the gym is getting there. You know, the getting dressed, the actual going to the gym, or being at the gym isn't as hard as the physically going. So think, Jean, in the context of what you were saying or what you're trying, like leaning into some of that uncertainty, is what is the hardest thing? And rather than going, oh, I'll put it off, is how do I actually pull it forward and do it earlier? And in Sarah saying she loves Brené Brown's work, yeah, I am a massive fan of Brené Brown, and yet, and allowing ourselves to show vulnerability is absolutely key. And I also think that we don't necessarily ask for help on those hard things as much as we should either, because I think at a subconscious level, we don't want to admit that we need help with something that's hard, but by asking for help, it actually becomes easier when we end up in this you know, this cycle that we're not going anywhere. What other thoughts have people got?
Can I chip in with something? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I've got two little thoughts. I think it'd be very helpful to appoint your own fan club, a mental fan club that lives inside your brain. And I don't know why human beings are naturally programmed to criticize themselves, be their own worst critics, and we all have that inside them. So it can really help to appoint a very large crowd of highly enthusiastic supporters that live in here and celebrate the things you do. That's one little tip I have. And the other thing I think is wonderful is to kind of learn to enjoy mistakes, that things aren't going to go to plan. And if you know that in advance, when they don't go to plan, you go, well, that's why I set out to. I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I knew they were going to come anyway. So just have a bit of fun when things don't quite go the way you think they'll go. And all of that is designed to squish that inner critic, which why they exist, I don't know, but they do exist. So squish them, get them rid of them. That's my thought.
Yeah, my husband took me to an improv night, and or it was a battle improv night, and every time the improv guys make a mistake, they kind of laugh at themselves and give them permission to sort of go, that was just terrible, and laugh about it and then continue on. And I think, yeah, we are, as you say, the first people to criticize ourselves, whereas if we actually just went, oh, that was a pile of you know what, or that just stinks, or actually I wouldn't do that again. Yeah, laughter is so essential, and we're certain none of us are perfect, so why not laugh at that too? And Jean's saying brilliant suggestions, And yeah, some more love for Brené Brown. I think we should maybe just have a Brené Brown watch party at some point during VID. We could just sit and watch a Netflix special together because she's so amazing. But I think what I was hoping that you would get out of this session, and I'm just going to go back to here. What I was hoping that you would get out of this session is just to think about last year and take the right pieces from it. There's going to be a lot of talk about the future and where we're going in this session and subsequent sessions as well. But what are the things that are going to continue? What are the things that you take out of last year that you want to continue? What are the things that you're going to leave behind? And just own some of the shit from last year and what's happened before, and just go, okay, there's some things that I'm going to own, and there's some things that I want to take forward. And so the amazing thing I've found in owning my past is that there's an awful lot of strength even in the dark places. And I know that Brené Brown in particular talks about our shadows, and I firmly believe that even though there's darkness, that darkness needs to exist because the light does as well. And so we're going to head into a bit of a break. I'm going to give you guys a chance to get coffees. I'm going to be in the community for a while as well throughout the sessions. But just use some time before we go into the session with Don Price at 10, just to think about what are the questions that you would, if you're coming to that session, what are the questions you want to ask him? So Heath did an amazing TED talk last year in November in Sydney about taking control of your own happiness. And I find it quite a surprising topic for a guy from Manchester, because the guys from Manchester are tough nuts normally. So it's interesting that Don's talking about happiness. But what are the questions that you want to ask him? Because we're doing it live and unscripted. And he's also got a wicked sense of humour, so I'm sure there will be a lot of laughter too. So think about where you are on your I can't, I could, I will, I did, I am. I think about that circle and where you're potentially getting stuck, and what are the things in that circle that you need to work on so that you can start to take action. Because I really want to create an energy and an enthusiasm through VID this year about where we're going, not where we've been. So it's great to see you all here. Welcome back. We've got some great sessions today. We've also got a really full agenda for the rest of the week. One of our sponsors, the Change Management Institute, is hosting a panel on Wednesday morning. So, and they're talking about change beyond last year, which will be fascinating. We've also got another one of our sponsors next week from the International Association of Business Communicators, talking about, what we've learned about communication and being open with each other over the last year as well. So thanks so much for joining this little intro session. I will be back online in about 20 minutes or so. And welcome back to everyone again that was in VID19.